We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 42b. The Gemara is in the middle of a Tosefta, which is describing the words that the Kohen Mashuach Melchama says to the people. There are two times that he speaks to the people before they go to war. One time he speaks to them at the border, and the other time he speaks to them at the area of the battle. And at the border, what does he say? He says, Shimu divrei marchei hamelchama, listen to the regulations of war, v'chazru, and those who are not supposed to go to war, they should return, you should return from the war. And Rashi explains, Shimu divrei marchei melchama miroi lachzer, in other words, there are regulations, who's fit to return, not to fight, umiroi lelech, and who's fit to go out, who's fit to actually fight in the war, v'chazru haruim lachzer, and those who should not be fighting, they should return. Kagon, for example, banabayis, v'natakerem, ve'eres isha, if somebody builds a house, somebody plants a vineyard, somebody betroths a woman, v'yarev v'rachalevav, or somebody who's afraid, v'yavagav dechsib b'hen v'dibru hashotrim. Now, even though it says that the officers are the ones who make this speech, l'kamon amrin on the Kohen Kamar, later on we're going to say the Kohen Kamarlu, that it's the Kohen who actually says it to them, elasha shotrim mashmi and devar v'lam, but it's the shotrim, the officers, they're the ones that proclaim it loudly so the people are able to hear. And so that's the first thing he says again, Shimu divrei marchei hamelchama v'chazru, those who need to return should return. And b'melchama mahu amar, then when he's at the area of the battle, what does the Mashuach Melchama say? He says, Al yerach levavchem v'al tiru v'al techbezu v'al tartzu. He says, don't be afraid, and he uses these different languages of fear, and the idea is keneged arba devorim she'ovdei kochav emosid. It corresponds to four things that the idol worshippers do in order to instill fear in those who they are fighting. And the four things are magifin, they clash their weapons together, umarian, and they blow the horns, svachin, and they scream, v'romsin, and they trample, and all of that noise is supposed to instill fear in their enemies. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Plishtim bo bin itzchona shel Goliath v'chulu. The Plishtim came with the victory of Goliath. And the Gemara says, Goliath, why is his name Goliath? Amar Rabbi Yochanan she'amad begiloi panim l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means he stood in a brazen manner in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Beru lachem ish v'yared Eli, says, choose a person to go down against me. And what is the reference in that pasuk when it says ish? Ve'ein ish el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ish is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Goliath was saying he could fight directly against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar, like it says, Hashem ish milchama. Hashem is an ish milchama, a man of war. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Hareini mapilo al yad ben ish. So I'm going to cause his downfall through the hands of somebody who is described as ben ish. Shenemar, as it says, V'David ben ish Efrasi. It says David was ben ish Efrasi. So again, he's a ben ish, and he's the one, ben ish Efrasi hazeh. He's the one that ultimately defeated Goliath. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Meir, B'shloshem mekomos lachtu piv la'oso rasha. There were three times when this wicked person Goliath, he said something which ended up sealing his fate. Echad beru lachem ish v'yorad Eli. One is where he said, choose a man to go down upon me. Sounds like he's really saying this person will defeat me. V'idach, in the other one, imyuchal hilachem iti v'ikani. Again, he mentions that he's going to be hit by the person, he's going to be defeated. V'idach, in the other one, the kamar leila David, he says to David, Hakelev anochi ki ata ba Eli b'makolos. You're coming against me. Again, it sounds like he's going to be defeated. These were all really references that he didn't realize he was making, that ultimately he would be defeated by David HaMelech. David Nami Amarle, but the Gemara says, 1 second, David also used such a language, because David Nami Amarle, Ata ba Eli b'cherev b'chanisu v'chidon, you're going to come upon me with these various weapons. He used the same language of ba Eli, so why don't we say the same thing by David? But the Gemara says it's not the same because of the way that David concluded his statement, Hador Amarle, because then David said to him, V'anochi ba Elecha b'shem Hashem tzavakos Elokei marchos Yisrael asher cheirafta, but I'm coming against you in the name of Hashem. And the Gemara continues, Vayigash ha-plishti hashkim v'harev. So then it says the plishti talking about Goliath. He came in the morning and in the evening. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said, says, what does the pasuk mean to say? Kedei levatlan mikriya shema shachars v'arvis. He came in the mornings and in the evenings in order to stop them from saying kriya shema in the mornings and in the evenings. And the pasuk goes on to say, Vayisiatse v'arboim yom. He stood for 40 days. He came for 40 days. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Keneged arboim yom shenitna behen Torah. That's corresponding to the 40 days that the Torah was given. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Vayetze ish habeinayim imachanos plishtim. It identifies him as ish habeinayim, and it's going to say that that's Goliath. My beinayim. What does it mean beinayim? And the Gemara offers a few explanations. Amar Rav says, Shemavuna mikal mum, he was built without any blemishes. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, Beinoni shebe'echav, he was like the medium among his brothers. There were brothers who were all giants, and he was the one who was in the middle in terms of how he was built. Wasn't too big, wasn't too small. Devei Rabbi Shila Amar, the yeshiva Rabbi Shila, it says, Shu asei kebinyan, he was built like a building. And the Gemara continues with a final answer. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Bar meya papi v'choda nanoi. And Rashi explains what that means. Barmeo papi v'chad nanoi ben hatarovis. What it means to say is, he was the son of a mixture, of a multitude. Shabo harbe anashim alima b'laylo echas, meaning there were many men that were with his mother in one night. V'nisabra min echad, and she became pregnant from one of them. Nimsa ha'echad aviv v'kula menafim. It turned out that one was actually his father, and the rest were adulterers. Nanoi zeu av b'loshen parsi. The word nanoi, that means father in Persian. That's the one father that he actually had. And papi prashra, that means he had a bunch of stepfathers, so to speak. V'loshen isha beinayim. So what does it mean now? Isha beinayim sheyotzu mi bein anoshim harbe. It means he came out of many men. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, V'Golias Shemo Migas, and Golias was his name from Gas. Tani Rav Yosef taught, Shakol Doshen Esimo Kagas, everybody was on his mother, like a threshing floor. Again, a reference to what we said before, she was with many men. And the Gemara continues, Ksiv, it's written Maros, it says he came from the caves of the Plishtim, V'Karin and Marchos, and we read the word as Marchos. Tani Rav Yosef taught, Shakol Heru B'Imo, what that's a reference to is the fact that everyone, many men, they penetrated his mother. And the Gemara continues, Ksiv, the pasuk says it's written Harafa. It talks about the fact that his mother was Harafa, or Ksiv Arpa, but then it also refers to as Arpa. That's the same Arpa from the story of Rus. Rav Shmuel, that's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel. Chadamr, one says Harafa Shema, her real name was Harafa. V'lama nikra Shema Arpa. Why was she called Arpa? Shakol orphano same achareh, that everybody, they came up from behind her. Again, it has to do with the fact that she was like an animal, and they would have these acts of relations with her. V'chadamar Arpa Shema, and one says the other way around, her name was actually Arpa. V'lama nikra Shema Harafa. Why was she called Harafa? Shakol doshen osa kaharifos, that everybody would thresh with her like the wheat kernels, the crushed kernels. They would all crush her. Again, it's a reference to the fact that she was with many men. And the Gemara says, V'chein hu omer, likewise it says, Vatikach o isha vatifros ha-mosach al pnei ha-be'er, vatishtach oleh harifos, that also is a reference to these crushed kernels. And the Gemara continues, V'boy seim mehach, if you want, I could say the references from here, from the following pasuk, Im tichdesh aso aval, it says, if you crush the fool, b'machdesh b'so harifos ba'oli, it says in the mortar, among these, again, these crushed kernels, with the pestle, same basic idea. You see that the pasuk uses the word harifos as a reference to these crushed kernels. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, by Golius vesarbas eila yuldu laharafa begas, these four sons, they were born to Harafa in Gas, vayiplu bi'ad David u'bi'ad avodav, and they fell in the hands of David and the hands of his servants. Ma'in hinu, who are these four individuals? Amar Rav Chisda says, Saf u'madon Golius v'yishbi benov. It refers to Saf and Madon and Golius and Yishbi and Nov. Vayiplu bi'ad David u'bi'ad avodav, and it says they fell in the hands of David and his servants. Techsiv, as it's written, Vatishak arpa lechamosa v'rus dov kaba. It says in Rus that Arpa kissed her mother-in-law, but Rus clinged. She stayed with her mother-in-law. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yavo b'nei hanashuka v'yiplu b'yad b'nei hadavuka. Let the sons of the one who kissed, meaning the sons of Arpa who departed, who left her mother-in-law, let them come along, and they're going to fall to the hands of the sons of the one who stayed with her mother-in-law. Darash Rava Darshans Bischar Arba Dimos Shahurida Arpa al Chamos, as a reward for the 4 tears that Arpa cried when she left her mother-in-law. Zachso v'yatsu mimenu arba givorim. So she merited that she had these 4 mighty sons. Shenemar, as it says, Vatisena kolon vativkena od. And Rashi over here says, Vativkena od, they cried further, meaning Pam Shnia, she cried 2 times. Till Elmi Neksiv Vatisena kolena vativkena. And so therefore that's 2 times, that's Arba Demos, that's 4 tears. Shtei b'chayis mishtei anayim. What it means is 2 cryings from 2 eyes, that's a total of 4 tears. And the Gemara continues, Ksiv, it's written, Chetz chanitzo, half of his spear, v'karin on eitz chanitzo, but we read it as eitz chanitzo, the wood of his spear. Amr Belazar says, Adayin lo higiyana lechatzi shivcho shaloso rasha. What the pasuk is referencing is the fact that we haven't even described half of the praise of this wicked individual. Mikan, and from here we learn she'asur l'saper b'shivchon shal rashoim, that it's asur to speak about the praise of the wicked. But the Gemara says, V'lo liftach beklal, but if that's the case, why say anything good about Goliath? Why are they saying any kind of praise? And the Gemara says to that, Lo doi shivchei de David, that we wanted to say some praise of Goliath, because that really tells the praise of David, because David was able to defeat someone who was so mighty. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, B'nei Ammon bod b'nitzchono shel Shovach v'chulu. It says the people of Ammon, they came with the victories of Shovach. Ksiv Shovach u'ksiv Shovach. Shofach. It's written that his name was Shovach, but it's also written that his name was Shofach. Rav u'Shmuel, this is a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Omar Shofach Shemo, one says his name was really Shofach. V'lama nikra Shmo Shovach. Why was he called Shovach? She'asoi keshovach. He was built like a dovecote, meaning to say he was very tall. V'chad Omar Shovach Shemo, and the other one says that his name was actually Shovach. V'lama nikra Shemo Shofach. Why is he called Shofach? She'kol haroa oso nishbach lefanav kekiton. That anybody who saw him, his courage would be poured out like you pour out water, and that's why he's referred to as Shofach, the idea of pouring. And the Gemara continues, Hashpasu kekever pasuach kulam giborim. This is talking about the mighty warriors of Nebuchadnezzar's army. And the Gemara has a machlokas. How do we understand this pasuk of Hashpasu? Rav u'Shmuel, it's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel. V'yamri la Rabbi Yami v'Rabbi Yasi. And some say it's a machlokas Rabbi Yami and Rabbi Yasi. Chad Omer one says, B'shah shezorken chetz. What the pasuk means is that at the time that they would shoot their arrows, osin ashpasos shel chalolim. The word ashpas over here is a reference to the fact that there would be heaps and heaps of corpses of dead bodies. V'shema Tomar, maybe you'll say she'umnin b'karev, that these people were experts, they were professionals in terms of war, they were good at shooting. Talmud lomar kulam giborim, that's what the pasuk says, they were all mighty, it was because of their might specifically. V'chad Amar, and one says, B'shah sha'osin sarchein, what the pasuk means is, at the time that when they took care of their needs, when they went to the bathroom, osin ashpasos shal zevel, they made heaps and heaps of excrement. V'shema Tomar, and maybe you'll say, maybe you'll say it was due to some kind of illness in their intestines. Talmud lomar kulam giborim. That's what the pasuk says. It was because of their might. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Mori says, Shmami, we see from this, Haiman de Nafesh Zivlei, that if somebody has a lot of excrement, so Chole Mayayim, who it must be because of some kind of illness of the intestines. And the Gemara says, Lamai Nafkamina, what difference does that make? And the Gemara says to that, Litrach Benafshe, it means the person should take care of himself. He should look for some kind of a refuah before it gets worse. And the Gemara continues, Da'aga belevish yashchena. It says in the pasuk in Mishlei that if a person has concern, has worry in his heart, so the pasuk says yashchena, he needs to get rid of it, he needs to remove it. And the Gemara has a machlokas, what exactly that word means. Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Yasi, that's a machlokas, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yasi. Chad Amar yashchena midaita. One says it's like from a language of hesach hadas, he has to get it out of his mind. The Chad Amar, and one says yasichena la'acherim. If a person has worries, he should say over his worries to others. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, V'yatem iatem kain, and you, Klal Yisrael, you are not like this. And the Gemara asks, V'chol kach lama, what does he have to say all of these words for? Rashi over here explains, V'chol kach lama omer lehem u'mahi avtacha zu shevtichon ki Hashem Elokeichem aholech v'lo amar ki Hashem Elokeichem imochem. Why does it say Hashem Elokeichem, Hashem your God goes with you? Why not just say he's with you? U'mahi halicha zu, what is this halicha, this going with, that is being mentioned by the Mashuach Melchama, to mashma holech mamish, that it sounds like he's really walking with them. And to that the Gemara explains, Mimnei Hashem v'chol kinuyav, the reason is because the name of Hashem and all of the names of Hashem, Rashi says, Hashem v'chol kinuyav, the name of Hashem and all of the names that Hashem is referred to, omden ba'aron, the Gemara is going to say on the next Talmud, they're in the Aron, hayotze imam b'melchama, actually goes out with them in war. The name of God actually goes out with them to war, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph.